It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Today's a special day. I have a special guest. Her name is Simone Sloan. Simone is an executive business coach. The name of her business is Your Choice Coach. Simone, how are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm great. It's a great Thursday morning, and it's good. It's all good.
Well, Simone, would you take a little bit of time and just kind of introduce yourself to the audience and what is a business coach? What are your specialties in? And then we'll have a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And yeah, like as Ray said, your choice coach, and really focusing on the business side, looking at really we're a people organization, right? And what does that mean? Is that we work with people to enable them to affect some form of change, whether it's in your business, the organization, with your people, and even just in terms of the culture that you're trying to create. What we like to say is that we help organizations become more human to realize results. And what does that mean? Whether you're talking about a business plan or even looking at your business strategies, looking at our human capital strategy. And even just in terms of if you're working with managers that you've been working with for a long time, but who end up getting kind of toxic within the organization. But they're also valuable because you want to keep them. We work with them also to help you mobilize that change and to get the business effectiveness that you need.
Well, I got to be honest with you, Simone. With the economic turmoil that we see a lot of companies in today, obviously, there's a lot of changes being caused to organizations from this pandemic, especially in our industry as more and more of the end users are digitizing themselves, finding the relevancy in the core deliverable or questioning the relevancy in that. But I heard a long time ago that people don't leave companies, they leave people. And I think toxic management, if it exists under a pressure cooker that we're in, that pressure's got to explode sooner or later. And so, how do you really identify, or what are some of the types of signs that, I guess, if you will, that we have a problem with toxic management?
Yeah, I guess the first thing is really how you identify that if you are or not. And when you look at it from that perspective, right, because they're killing it in terms of getting the business moving, hitting those numbers and key performance measures, looking at it in terms of driving business growth. But in that drive, momentum, and growth and getting things done, their body's being left behind. Right? And if the culture allows you to speak up and say something, you get heard. But if not, you just keep blazing until you hit a certain point where people are just like, you know what? I don't know if I really like working with that person, right? Do I really trust that person?
Which is a shame.
Yeah,
you lose good people, Well, here's a question for you. There's a lot of, I wrote a couple articles about this, but, I believe a lot of the corporate culture it's been built around these internal employees to almost a detriment where they forgot about the external, customer.
Absolutely.
They focus so much on the internal customer that a lot of times they might see a disruptive manager or a manager that's a little bit more aggressive, mainly around accountability. They define that person as all of a sudden a toxic manager, when in all reality, it's more about accountability. Do you see a lot of that with the businesses that you consult with?
It's a combination of things, right? Because I look at it from three different systems, and I'm glad you mentioned the culture because that is the system that either is enabler, right, of this whole thing. But it also comes down to looking at it. Another pillar with it is the values, and what is it that you really are believing, and what is it that you're saying versus the behaviors that you're really showing, promoting, right, and showcasing and rewarding. And so if there's a disconnect in terms of what you say you believe versus what's really being shown, then people are getting mixed signals in terms of, well, I'm doing really well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And not really thinking holistically and 360 about the people piece. And that falls into the leadership styles, right? How are you defining your leadership? Is it more of a servant leadership, or is it more, it's a me show, and it's all about me, and I don't really care about anybody else. There's no we in this conversation. And really getting hold to that, because you talk about COVID, right? And these are things that have been percolating, but I think COVID's kind of given an opportunity now to really analyze, reflect, and take a deep, hard look at the people that you have currently, because are they the ones that you need in that next phase as we mobilize and navigate through this change?
Well, those are tough decisions. Anytime, your employees, that human capital component, obviously that's what takes really strong leadership, and those are really tough decisions. Let me ask you a question. If you're hired by an organization, they want to bring you in and they want to talk to you, can you what's our toxicity level? If you will. Do you have a program where you talk to all the associates, all the employees, and then take that information and come back to the executive team with it? Or,
Well,
how
yeah,
does
it's a
that work?
combination of things, right? But usually what's happening is that there's something being said, there's not, there, you see breakdowns in efficiency, communication, decision making. Or you might just see things just being so rigid and there's no innovation and growth. Something's causing that, right? Or someone. And so when you look at it from the team's perspective, then people start opening up and talking about, well, what's working and what's not working. And then all of a sudden it filters down to maybe one or two people within the team structure. Well, what I do is, yeah, I have a program, but it's not necessarily something fixed. It's really unique and tailored to that person's style and needs. Because what I use a lot is the emotional intelligence, and I use a lot of data-driven information to help chart that change, to get that realization as to, yes, you are an awesome rock star, but guess what? Here are other things where there are breakdowns, dead angles that you're not seeing, those blind spots, right? And this is what we're going to do to take some actions to course correct. And it's not me driving this, it's that person, because we're mapping out and co-creating strategies to help mitigate that. And this is not, and I say up front, this is not something about performance-based behaviors that you're going to say, hey, look at me, I'm doing it while I'm working with Simone. These are changes that you are going to start implementing as part of your habits that become norm. And people do recognize those changes when coming authentically, right? From going from head to heart and really caring about people. Because at the end of the day, people want to be respected, valued, and heard. And if those things are not part of that secret sauce of what you're creating as a leader, that's exclusion, right? And you're not going to get people to work with you, to trust you, to like you, and even want to move the needle with you.
And then they leave the person, not the
Absolutely.
company.
Absolutely.
All right, how is business through this? Obviously, these are, torturous times economically. It's been tough. It's, human cost of life, everything. But how is your business, navigating through this from that perspective? Are you busier? Are you, struggling because you can't go on site?
You can't go outside. But you can't go outside, yes. But luckily, two of my clients are also online. And so it makes it easier for facilitation of doing trainings, coaching, having these types of conversations to help people become more aware of their styles. Because now even more people need that emotional intelligence piece dialed up in this environment, right? Because people are used to the introverts to extroverts, and how are you dealing with those in between to ensure that mentally, physically, emotionally, that everyone is doing okay, and what resources are needed during this time to help them. And so one of the things that I do offer is around the stress management piece, to help with the emotional intelligence in that same vein. Talk about in terms of your branding and how do you become heard and seen through virtual worlds and lands where you have so much noise going on also. So those are some of the things that I'm tackling as part of this process. So yeah, it's evolving.
Here's a question for you. So you have a business, and let's say before the virus, this business they were in the office. I mean, you might have had a few remote employees, but for the most part, everybody showed up and corralled in that office. Now they're all obviously working in their homes. Is there anything a leader should be, really paying attention to, that maybe they had a great culture, maybe they didn't have any toxicity at all, but all of a sudden, what should they looking for? There might be a problem because we changed our process so drastically.
Absolutely. And the key thing is the communication piece. That is paramount. And it's not just communicating about the business, it's taking that time to say, hey, how are you doing? And asking those questions that people may not be comfortable talking about during this time. But it's the consistency of those weekly conversations. And don't say, yeah, we had it just because you saw someone on Zoom in a group meeting. Yeah. Take the time to do that one-on-one with your team. They need it right now, ever so more often, in terms of that frequency.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's extremely important. This is a great time for those, really high-level executives, even the CEOs of the companies, to really, to go down, to go down into the workforce.
Go down and deep.
I mean, think about it. You have a chance to talk to your employee in their home. Yep. You can see the dynamics of how that works. It might make you think things differently, when the kids are showing up, and how do you embrace that and make sure your team's not, putting pressure on the employee that's unnecessary.
Absolutely.
We are results oriented, and the world is changing. As long as we get results and we're doing things ethically and morally, we ought to let people do their thing,
Yeah, and I'm finding too that they're overworking now in this environment. And so giving them that permission to take a break and breathe, because you don't want burnout, right? And if they're not sourcing themselves, providing their adequate nutrition, you're going to get more health issues than you are in terms of the productivity. So it's a trade-off, but also has to be a balance in this integration in which we're operating.
Well, I got to be honest with you, Sloan. It was great to have you on today. Is there anything you want to add before we end? And I'm hoping my friends, if they reach out and talk to you some more. You seem like you got some great insight there to help our industry, help all companies really, navigate through these
Absolutely.
times.
Make sure that people have a voice. Make sure they have own their power, and they can step in confidently to say what they need to say, and have that voice and execute and innovate. Because you will need all voices right now to enable your organization to evolve, to thrive, and to be sustained.
It's the power of the group. It's the power of the collaboration. Simone, it was a pleasure having you on. I'm looking forward to bringing you again because we all know this, Simone. Status quo is the killer of all that we invented. Don't get stuck in status quo. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.